Happy Thanksgiving to all. With Thanksgiving, that means football. We got a lot to talk about. We'll talk about the Iron Bowl. We'll preview the semifinals in high school football and much more. So stay with us in the locker room. And welcome inside the locker room with Gerhard Mathigani. I'm Chase Robinson. It's a big weekend in football and got the Iron Bowl, got the FCS playoffs starting. And let's start with the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. They closed their season with a win. They have a week to sit and watch this week as they'll play the winner of Youngstown State and Sanford.
First time, or really second time in a row. The first time now is coming in as that 3 seed. But one of the things that really impressed me with JSU is coming into this season, they had all the hype. They had an All-American quarterback coming back. They had Rock Thomas transferring in. They had the Defensive Player of the Year, the preseason Darius Jackson. They had the Coach of the Year in John Gross. They had all these things stacked up almost in a situation where you're like, I wonder if they can live up to the expectations. And they did. They went out and they did what they were supposed to do, going undefeated in the OVC, and then setting themselves up with the number 3 national seed as they go into the playoffs. I just think that this team is now poised to make a strong run in these playoffs. Now that the sting of last year is now over with. Now it's completely in the rearview mirror. Now they can go chase the championship this year. I'm interested to see what they do starting in the second round.
They got the number 3 seed, but are these teams in the FCS as good as last year or better?
This interesting question. I think one of the things, especially with North Dakota State, they've been here so many times, and I think that's one of the things that you look at whenever you start the FCS playoffs is a lot of those fans, they go ahead and book those tickets to Frisco because they see themselves already there. Now can JSU get back there, and then can they win? That would be the biggest question. Sam Houston State's another great school. The Citadel's another great school. You have a lot of these national seeds that made it into this year's tournament. We will see how they look, but as of right now, I think JSU, especially defensively, that's where they're playing the best football right now. I think that goes a long way, and then we know that offense can and will at some point start to go off.
Well, here's Coach John Gross this week talking about the playoffs.
Our guys know it's a totally new season, and you go into that with that mind frame and take it one game at a time. The opponent you're going to play in the playoffs is going to be a great opponent, whoever it is, and they're going to be a really good football team. So it goes back to how we play and how we approach the preparation and being prepared. But this bunch will be business as usual, and I think the important thing about next week is being able to keep game speed. We're playing so well right now at such a high level, is you don't want to lose that going into the playoffs. You want to make sure that you get better next week during practice.
And again, you can see JSU, they'll have this week off, but they'll be back in action the week after against the winner of Youngstown State and Sanford. The Iron Bowl coming up this Saturday, and let's start with the perspective of the Auburn Tigers. Of course, they got a big win over Alabama A&M this past weekend with some injuries. What's that looking like heading into the Iron Bowl?
Well, I think they're really hurt going into the Iron Bowl, and they need a lot of these horses back. Jonathan Holsey looks like he will come back a cornerback. Chandler Cox will come back as well. Sean White is the question mark right now, but they do have Cameron Petway. In the middle of their season when they went on that little run, what was working for Auburn was they were playing lights out defensively. Cam Petway was kind of the guy that was making all the plays for the offense in the running game. It took a lot of pressure off Sean White, and Sean White was really effective in the passing game because he can run and pass. He had a lot of games where he was 13 of 16 for 159 yards. Not necessarily mind-blowing stats, not stats that Jalen Hurts is putting up,
right,
but they're very effective. And I think that you're getting some of that effectiveness back with Cameron Petway. But now Sean White's hurt. We don't know his status as well. Jeremy Johnson came in against Alabama A&M, played well, but A&M, of course, is no Alabama. And so we will see if the confidence that JJ had last week transfers into this game if Sean White cannot play. If Sean White can play, how effective is he? Because it is his throwing shoulder that hurts. And how effective is Cam Petway? Because if they have what they had the middle of the season, they could put up a competitive game against Auburn or put up a competitive game against Alabama. If they look like they did at the beginning of the year, or if they're having to rely on Jeremy Johnson to throw the ball a lot, I think that Alabama can run away with it. Their best bet is to have everybody as healthy as possible. At this point, nobody is, but if they can have them 90%, they'll be in good shape.
Jalen Hurts has had excellent season so far. What's it going to take for Auburn's defense to stop him?
Really have to get a lot of pressure on him. One of the things that he is so great at is he doesn't just make these quick, rash decisions. Like every now and again, throwing the ball, he can throw the ball into some precarious situations. But one of the things I like about him is that he looks to throw the ball if that's what the play call goes for at the beginning. If not, he could tuck it and run it. And he's had games where he's thrown for 300 yards and he's run for 100 yards. He is the quintessential kind of quarterback that, ironically, Auburn loves. That kind of that dual threat guy that plays within the system and plays within the offense. I think they have to get pressure on him, make him throw those precarious passes, and then if he does, you got to make him pay with interceptions. He doesn't fumble the ball a lot. They have a good running game. And this is that year that Alabama doesn't come in with a Derrick Henry or Trent Richardson or a Mark Ingram. They don't come in with that one huge stalwart guy. So if they can make Jalen Hurts make errors in the passing game, that's where Auburn's defense, I think, can get an edge on Alabama.
Well, here's Coach Gus Malzahn as they prepare for the Iron Bowl.
This may be the best pass rushing unit since I've been playing Alabama. They really do a good job of especially when they know it's pass situations, of harassing the quarterbacks. You know, it's been very impressive to see the amount of touchdowns that their defenses have created, mostly off their pass rush. It's been very impressive to watch.
And now let's move over to the Alabama side of the Iron Bowl. They're rolling. A win over Chattanooga, but not a lot of people were not happy with the way that score ended up being. Right. Talk about that. It was, not that big win.
Yeah, it wasn't what we saw when you see Alabama play like Tennessee or Texas A&M, these convincing big-time wins. And I think there is something to Nick Saban where he honestly, and I don't want to speak for him, I think deep down he somewhat kind of likes those kind of games, knowing that he now has a message to his team going into a big rivalry game. You look at a team like Western Kentucky at the beginning of the year as well. Another one of those games where you're just like, they didn't play as what we thought that they would play like. But it's Chattanooga, and Chattanooga's a really good team, and they'll make a strong run in the FCS playoffs as well. I just think that Alabama right now is playing about as well as you can play. Take that game away, take the Western Kentucky game away. You look at their SEC competition, they're playing hard, they're playing very good football right now, and they have no more Chattanoogas left on the schedule. They have Auburn, they have SEC championship, and then possibly 2 games in the playoffs. It's now easy to keep their minds focused on this game.
The Auburn game is always one of those that, Alabama could be 10 times better, but it's going to be a close game.
Right.
What's Alabama got to do to just go way ahead of Auburn?
Well, the funny thing is that these games are usually tight, and Vegas put it at a 17-point spread, which Alabama's been around the spread really so far for much of this year. I think that what Alabama needs to do is come out early and punch Auburn right in the mouth early. Some good aggressive calls at the beginning of the game, get some early touchdowns, because Alabama playing with the lead is so suffocating because that defense just clamps down on you. They're like a python. They choke and restrict you. And so if Auburn is now having to catch up on the scoreboard and not getting a situation where they can run freely their offense, I think that's what Alabama separates themselves. And they're already talented and already good enough to beat Auburn by 17 points. But if they get out to a 14-point, 21-point lead, they can run away with it.
And here is Coach Nick Saban as they prepare for the Iron Bowl.
I think this is one of the greatest rivalry games in the country. I know it means a lot to a lot of people in this state as well as nationally, and the competitors in the game, probably enjoy, this kind of competition, this kind of rivalry as much as any game that they play.
And you can check out the Iron Bowl 2:30 Saturday on CBS. We're going to grab a timeout. When we come back, there's some high school football Friday night that you're not going to want to miss. So stay with us as we preview it here in the locker room. Back here in the locker room, and it is high school football playoff semifinals Friday night. And back earlier in the season, there was a Piedmont-Ohatchee matchup that everybody was excited about. They packed in the Creek Bank at Ohatchee, and everybody said, we could see this game again coming up later on in the playoffs. Well, Friday night, we're going to get to see it again.
Yeah, it's so funny how the way this works out, because at the beginning of the year, these were 2 teams in the top 10, and we just had that inkling that if everything goes right and no team suffers any tough injuries and things like that, we could see this thing. And the way it forecasted was if Piedmont was the 1 and Ohatchee was the 2, they would meet in the semifinals for a chance to go to the state championship. And here we are. I think that both teams, in my opinion, are really reminiscent of each other in a lot of ways. Their offenses both can score a lot. They do what they do well. Ohatchee runs the ball really well. I know you're seeing a pass here in these highlights. And when they do pass, it's effective and then goes for long yardage. But one of the things I really like about both squads is their quarterback play. I love the way Taylor Hayes plays, and I love the way that Taylor Eubanks plays. They're both quarterbacks that know so well their offense and can play it so well that no matter what point of the game, you're up by 10, you're down by 10, late, early, it's the same quarterback. It's the same play. They don't have these highs and lows and these ebbs and flows. And I think that you have to rely on that senior leadership, the senior for both teams. And then when you stack up the defenses against one another, I think you have an interesting matchup really on both sides of the ball.
Piedmont's been here before. They won the state championship last year. They've been in these semifinal games several years, whether they win or lost. This is Ohatchee's first time. This is Ohatchee's first winning season in a long, long time. How is that going to affect this game? You
remember back in the day, and not really even back in the day, it's maybe a few years back, when Piedmont was knocking on the door, it always seemed like whether it was Madison Academy or Leeds, that would come in and kind of be that wall. And then they broke that wall. And I think it was in 2009, they ended up winning a state championship. Once they broke that wall, then everything changed. Now they have a champion's mentality. I think that Ohatchee is now at that place where can they break that wall? Can they get through that wall and just happen to share a county with the team that is that wall? I think that in Ohatchee's perspective, what they have to do is continue to do what they do. And they've done a good job of that up until this point. But this is the deepest they've ever been as a 3A team. They're not the deepest been ever because they won a state championship, but that was in a lower class. I think Coach Scott Martin and his guys understand that it was a 3-point ball game in the second half the first time we played. It ended up being a 10-point margin, 45-35. But we are essentially a team that can score 40-plus points. They average like 43 on the season. So if they can play to their averages, which Piedmont makes it hard to do, but if they play to their averages, then they have a great chance to pull this thing out.
Well, it's going to be a fun one Friday night. And here's Coach Steve Smith as they prepare for Ohatchee.
I think a lot of times a lot of people get tied up in the rematch part of it. I think what you really have to focus on is you got two really good football teams that have played really well all year long. The first game was a classic battle down at their place, a great environment, great crowd, could have went either way. But at the end of the day, you know, all those previous 13 games that we've played really have nothing to do with Friday night. And that's what I try to tell our kids each week, you know. They've won their games by big margins. We've won our games, most of them by large margins. But all those games and the way that they happen, none of that carries over.
And if you want to go check that game out Friday night, it's at the Field of Champions in Piedmont, 7 p.m. And I would suggest get there early because there's going to be a lot of people there. Another big high school football game happening Friday night is a team we talked about Piedmont has been playing. They moved up to Class 4, and that's Madison Academy playing Hoax Bluff.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup. And if you're looking for kind of the story of the year, you have to turn Hoax Bluff. I mean, they're one of those teams where when you say you don't know a team early in the season, they are the quintessential, really staple of that. They were 0-3 to start the year. One of their losses was to Cherokee County. They just beat Cherokee County last week to get themselves in a position to win here. They are the number 4 seed in that very tough Class 4A Region 5. They had teams like Jacksonville, Cherokee County, Sacs, all in their region. They came in as the 4th seed, and they're the only 4 seed still alive right now. Coach Robinson has infused that never quit mentality, and they run their offense so well, and they're a young team really kind of around their perimeter. They have good senior leadership, but they're really a young team kind of at their core, some of their skill positions, and you're starting to see each week this team growing just a little bit and a little bit, and they're at a point now where they're one step away from a state championship. Obviously, that step will be a tall one because Madison Academy has been here before, and they haven't been here in the 4A level, but they've been here before as far as in the state championship conversation. So they have a champion's mentality. It mirrors a lot of what is going on in Class 3A with Ohatchee and Piedmont with both these teams.
That's what I was about to say. Madison Academy has dominated 3A and move up to 4A. What's it going to take for Hoax Bluff to stay in this game with the Madison Academy?
I think that they have to avoid big plays by Madison Academy. If they can keep the game kind of in the low 20s, the mid 20s, and keep Madison Academy's offense off the field, create a lot of 3-and-outs, and then cap off drives whenever they have the football. If they get a turnover, they get an interception, score a touchdown. They did that against North Jackson. That was one of the things that separated them. Get points whenever your defense makes a play. If your offense is rolling, get into the end zone. Don't beat yourself, because Madison Academy is another one of those teams that they don't beat themselves very often. So Hokes Bluff has to play smart, but a lot of it's kind of like the Piedmont Hatchet game. If they do what they do, they're capable of winning this game. Madison Academy is a very tough team, and Hokes Bluff comes in as the underdog. That's not anything they haven't seen before. They've been the underdog really since the playoffs started. So I think that Hokes Bluff has the confidence to get it done. Now they have to go out and execute, and I think it takes nothing different than what they've done over the last 12 weeks.
And here's Hokes Bluff coach Mike Robertson talking about being that underdog.
I guess in my lifetime, I've been the underdog as a player. I was a little guy, so, you add that to our team. So I guess the personality of our team's that way a little bit. But we understand that. We understand we've got to play above our heads, and we've accepted that role, and I think that's important that we know that. But we're also confident. I think our guys expect to win now that we've accomplished this much.
And that game is also Friday night. A lot of great high school football, so go check that out on this Thanksgiving weekend. We're going to grab another timeout. When we come back, we'll talk more college football, about the college football playoff, pick six, and more coming up. Back here inside the locker room, and as always in December, we have a great event, and that's the Pigskin Roundup All-Star Banquet. If you want to see all the great local players and get to hear a great speaker this year, calling out to Word Alive International Outreach. And I know, Mickey, this is a huge event for us, and we're excited to have Kevin Still as a part of it this year.
Yeah, we've got a guy, there's a lot of talk about the Iron Bowl this week, obviously. We've got a guy who's been on both sides of that, so I think it'll be real interesting to hear what he has to say coming up on December the 12th.
That's right, and another event we will be putting on once again happens 2 days before that, and that is indoors at Pete Matthews Coliseum with some great high school basketball.
Yeah, we're really excited about this. I think, guys, this is our best lineup that we've ever had, and I like to refer to it as kind of a mini Northeast Regional, except you don't have to come to the Coliseum and just see one classification all day or the whole time you're there. You're going to see teams from various classes, some of the best teams in our area and in the state on display that day.
Yeah, I think a lot of ways you'll be able to get a good preview of teams before they get into area play, and then obviously with the county tournaments coming up in the turn of the year, and then of course with the regionals, and then as we go forward. AL.com put out a piece about the top 15 players in the state of Alabama. Two of them from Sacred Heart, and Kevin Unknown, who's a recent Sanford signee, and DJ Heath, and Spain Park has got one with Johnson as well. So I think that we'll have a very good turnout and a lot of great basketball that night.
That's going to be a fun day, and all of those games you'll see right here live on TV 24. We've been talking the past few weeks about the College Football Playoff Committee releasing the top four. We'll have our top four coming up in just a minute, but let's take a look at the committee's top four from this past Tuesday night. And of course, the Alabama Crimson Tide at number one, and no change to an Ohio State, 3 Michigan, 4 Clemson. Guys, what's your thoughts here on this one?
Well, the committee their job was made easy on the front end of this because nobody lost, and Ohio State squeaked one by against Michigan State, and maybe they would have put Michigan ahead of Ohio State. I think that right now it's about set where it is, and I think Clemson just needs to win, Bama just needs to win, and then of course we got the big one with OU and Michigan.
And with that game, with Ohio State and Michigan, one of those will be out after next week. Who do you guys see them putting in?
I think the question for me is who's going to go out. That's kind of where I'm thinking, who's going to win Ohio State and Michigan. I kind of feel like it's going to be Ohio State, but I don't know. It will depend on what happens, I guess. And I think even things could change a little bit after the championship, the conference games that take place. So if there's going to be a big vacancy there for sure, at least one, Auburn could shake things up, but Alabama's going to be in this thing no matter what happens in the Iron Bowl.
Well, let's take a look at the top four that we put together, and Mickey, you will be up first.
Well, I've kind of got Michigan at number 4. I put Clemson up to number 3. This is kind of I just feel like Michigan is going to lose the Ohio State game with Ohio State. So therefore, I'm putting them at 4, one step closer to getting out of the top 4.
Yeah, and you've made a great point for Ohio State really all year long, and you've had them in the top 4 even before the committee put them in the top 4. mine looks a lot like the committee's, and really the main reason I think that is I think that we have a situation where it's almost like we had a couple of years ago when Mississippi State and Alabama were both in this top 4. We had two teams kind of from the same program, and you know that those two teams are going to work it out on the field. Now it's where is everybody else late. And I think one of the bigger things in college football is we have one really, really, really good team, and then we have a bunch of teams that they could be really good, but we don't know because how great is Ohio State? Don't know. How great is Michigan? We don't know. How great is Clemson? They almost lost to NC State. We have a lot of ifs and with a lot of these other teams, and so I don't really beef with the way the committee put their top 4. So I'll leave it as is.
And I completely agree with you and agree with the committee. I kept mine there with Ohio State 2, Michigan 3. Of course, one of those will be out, and next week we'll be talking about someone new in the College Football Playoff Committee's poll. Well, it's time now for our Pick 6, where we get to pick some games happening this week, and we take a look at last week's standings as Mickey's still with the lead with the 51-20 there as we move into this week's game. First up, LSU at Texas A&M.
Oh, so I got a 1-game lead. Let's see how I can mess that up this week. I'm going to go with the home team this week, Texas A&M. I think LSU's kind of done now.
Yeah, LSU, in my opinion, they're one of those teams that I think can rally. And if they wouldn't rally, in my opinion, under Les Miles. I think they do under Orgeron. They get the win in College Station.
I'm going with LSU in this one as well. Next, Washington at Washington State.
I'm going with the higher-ranked team here, even though Washington State is very prolific offensively. And they have the game at home, which gave me pause when I picked this one, but I'm going to go with the higher-ranked team and go with Washington.
Yeah, Washington is one of those teams that a lot of people in the Southeast probably haven't seen a lot of. And ever since beating Stanford by 30, their resume is kind of what have you done? And I think this will be the chance for them to show what they've done and what they are. And I think they know that they're one loss from Ohio State and Michigan away from being in the top 4, potentially. So I think that Washington gets it done on the road, but it won't be easy.
I got Washington in this one. Next is the big one, Michigan at Ohio State.
Well, I've already said I'm going with the Buckeyes here. I think this game for me boils down to home field advantage. If it were at Michigan, I would pick Michigan, but it's at Ohio State.
Yeah, it's at the Shoe, and I really, really like Ohio State at home. Urban Meyer's got a phenomenal record when he's in front of his home crowd. This will be the game. I'm more excited about this game than any other game on the schedule. Not because it's 2 versus 3 and not because it's a rivalry game, but it's because I love the coaching matchup. I love Harbaugh versus Urban Meyer, and I wish this game was kind of at a neutral site in between, maybe in the Indianapolis Colts Stadium or something like that. But with this being at the Shoe, I like Ohio State by a hair.
Well, we all agree on this one. I've got Ohio State. Next up, Tennessee on the road at Vanderbilt.
Boy, I tell you, it's kind of tough to pick against Vandy in this game because they always play Tennessee close, even when Tennessee's good. But I'm going to pick Tennessee here.
We send these picks into Jason Sparks, and I do it via text every now and again. You should have saw me trying to pick this game. I put V-A-N-D, delete, delete, delete. V-A-N-D, delete, delete, delete. I just couldn't go with Vanderbilt all the way. They have a good defense. I think they make it very interesting. But I like Tennessee to come up with a win.
And I've got Tennessee in this one. Next, Florida at Florida State.
I'm going with Florida State in this one.
Yeah, I like the Seminoles as well. I think that we've gotten to a point in this part of the season where Jimbo Fisher's now linked to a whole lot of jobs, and Florida already knows their destiny. They already know that they're going to the SEC championship. I like the Seminoles in this one.
And I am going with the Florida Gators in this one, the SEC team. And finally, it's the Iron Bowl, Auburn at Alabama.
Well, it's hard to go against Alabama this year. I do think had Auburn not started off so schizophrenic at the beginning of the year offensively and found their identity quicker, even with the injuries, I think this is a would have been a pick-em game. But because Auburn's kind of been chasing their tail every week, trying to figure out what they're going to do each and every week, plus the injury issue going into the game, I think Alabama will win.
Cameron Petway not healthy. Sean White not healthy. You cut the tape back on of when Auburn went in their 5-game winning streak. Those two were effective and efficient. The defense played lights out. I really expect this to be a low-scoring game. Both teams in the top 10 as far as scoring defense. But I think Jalen Hurts and those guys make too many plays down the stretch. I think it'll look a lot like the LSU game where not necessarily not no scoring, but not a lot of scoring, and then at the very end, Alabama puts together the plays they need to win the game.
And I am going with the Tide in this Iron Bowl as well. And that'll do it for us this week. Hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week inside the locker room.